financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions. Welcome to another edition of Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with Jonah Bronstein of the New Bronstein Times, and a longtime F, but his first time appearance on the show. I've known him through social media for years and years. He's a Bills super fan, coming to us from Long Island in his man cave. We're going to get into some of those jerseys back there a little bit later. Because it looks like you could be in a Dick's Sporting Goods or a Champs or something like that. There's a retail feel to all those jerseys hanging back there. Joe Lozito joining us. Joe, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Tim and Jonah. It's a pleasure, and I'm really happy to actually talk to you guys two-on-one here. I'm a big fan of the show, and I listen to every episode, and it's an honor to be a part of it.
Well, it's a long time coming, and we've been talking about this for a bit, and we were supposed to meet when the Jets visited the Bills last season, and the deluge kept that from happening. I'm too much of a pussy to leave the press box, and it just wasn't good enough for me. We're going to get into one of Joe's experiences, which has marked his life. No pun, it's marked his face. But it's a little bit tougher to deal with in rainfall. So that's why I'm readily admitting here that Joe is a man's man. And I saw it on a website. I don't have it handy right now, but you were named at one point Badass of the Week by a website.
That's true.
And I thought that was pretty cool. But let's explain why Joe Lozito, 51-year-old Joe Lozito from Long Island, is a badass. He wrote a book in 2014 called The New York Subway Hero, My Battle with Evil and a Spree Killer. And it is exactly what the title just indicated. Back in 2011, Joe Lozito was a passenger on a New York subway train headed towards Times Square on his way to his job where he worked the box office at Lincoln Center. And that is where he encountered Maxim Gelman, who, unbeknownst to Joe at the time, was in the midst of a 28-hour killing spree, because one of the murders he committed was via car, a hit and run. And this took place in Brooklyn and in Manhattan. He killed 4 people. He wounded 5 others, with Joe Lozito being the last of the 5. And thankfully for a lot of people in a crowded subway, train, or on the platform, he did encounter Joe Lozito, because Joe Lozito took him down for the police, who were standing by and watching. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. But this is a story that was covered quite extensively by the New York City media in 2011 and through a lawsuit against the New York Police Department in 2013. But I just want to give a little more background before we let Joe talk, so that way Joe doesn't have to get into the minutia of the details. Maxim Gelman, he was a Ukrainian immigrant, but a U.S. citizen. He went to schools in New York City, middle school, high school, etc. Became a U.S. citizen in 2005. And obviously mentally unstable. And he started off his spree by stabbing his stepfather to death in the home right there in front of his mother. He then went to the home of a girlfriend, killed her mother, waited for the girlfriend to come home, killed the girlfriend, committed a carjacking, and while in that stolen vehicle, ran over a pedestrian, killing him. And he ended up in the New York subway system where he encountered Joe Lozito. Well, no, wait, let me take a step back. One more little bit of information. He pounded on the motorman's door. He tried to get into the conductor. Joe Lozito, not knowing who this person was at the time, even though he'd been in the newspapers that day, Joe, coming from the Philadelphia area, didn't see the New York papers or know that Maxim Gelman was a thing. And while Gelman is pounding on the door, a couple of police officers happen to be in there because they are doing extra duty trying to catch a serial stabber / killer. And there Maxim Gelman is in front of them. They ask him who he is. He says he's with the police. He's obviously deranged and not with the police. They say, no, sorry. And so then Maxim Gelman turns around and does what, Joe?
Well, he at that point he had walked away. This is just kind of an important part of the story. When they didn't let him in, another gentleman who was standing next to me, who obviously recognized Gelman. I was the only one on the train, I think, that didn't recognize him. He went up to the same door, except he's up there with a purpose. He's trying to get the police to come out. So he knows who this guy is. And he's frantically tapping on the window, waving them out, looking over his shoulder at Gelman, waving them out. And when Gelman started to come back up towards the door, this gentleman went right back next to me. And Gelman, before he reached the door, he was about 2 feet from me and 3 feet from the door. He looked down at me. I looked up at him, and he said, "You're going to die. You're going to die." And he pulled a knife out from his jacket, and he stabbed me right here under the eye.
And one thing I do want to mention also here, Joe, I reached out to Joe middle of last week to be on this podcast. We're not having Joe on as a guest because of anything that's happening in the world specifically. It has nothing to do with what happened on the 4th of July in Illinois. We're not trying to make any statements here. Joe is just a longtime fan of the Bills, who I've been in touch with and have wanted to have on the show. And coincidentally, talking about these things, I even reached out to Joe last night. I don't know what kind of triggers he has. And I wanted to make sure we were okay, given what's going on in the world. Then again, Joe, if we wait another week or two, probably going to have another incident that will push us back, right?
Yeah, seems that way. So, but you're 100% right. We've been discussing this for a while now, so it's definitely just coincidental.
So, Joe, and you kind of you've been self-effacing with this aspect of your story, and I will say, 2014, you did a piece with Cracked. Now, people remember Crack magazine as the knockoff to Mad magazine, the one you didn't want. If you were a kid and maybe mom decided to bring back a fun magazine for you, you wanted Mad. You didn't want Cracked. But Cracked has a really cool website where they do a lot of stuff that is not Mad magazine-y or Cracked magazine-y. And I don't have the title in front of me, but it's something along the lines of 7 things you should know if you ever find yourself facing a serial stabber. Actually, I do have it here on my screen. Oh, Cops Won't Help You. 7 Things I Saw as a Real Slasher Victim. And there's also a video that you can get on YouTube in which Joe narrates it. And it is fantastic. It is animated. And it takes you through the incident. So I recommend if you're interested in what Joe has to say here, first off, buy his book, which I'm going to plug again.
Thank you.
He wrote it in 2014, The New York Subway Hero, My Battle with Evil and a Spree Killer. And it's available on Amazon. And then also check out what he wrote and the video that he narrated at cracked.com. You can get easy links to all that stuff on the Wikipedia page for Maxim Gelman stabbing spree. All right. So that
Tim,
was a little bit of a
can I interrupt one thing? You
can always interrupt.
Well, the story about the crack thing was funny because I know Crack just like you said. It was the old magazine, and when they contacted me, I was like, "Wait, you guys still put out a magazine?" And they said, "No, we're all video now. We do these animations and these clips online." I said, "Oh, okay, perfect, yeah." So I did not narrate that because they said I did not sound New York City enough, which I
Oh,
was very happy with, by the way. I don't, you know, if you ever met my sister sounds very much New York City-ish. But when I spoke to them, they said, no offense, but you don't sound like you're from New York
oh
City.
man.
I
Because
said,
the
no
guy, the
offense
cartoon
taken.
even identifies himself like, hi, I'm
Yes.
Joe Lozito.
Yes. Well, most of, you know, they did everything that they put in there. There was a few slight errors, but for the most part, it was 100% accurate. But after I answered the questions, we were all set to go. And then the guy's like, look, no offense, but we wanted someone that sounded a little more New York. And I said, none taken. I'm okay with that. And they got I guess a voiceover actor. But
Well,
the thing that blew my mind about that was it has over 9 million views. It absolutely blew my mind. I had no idea they had that big of a following.
well, correct me if I give a detail wrong because I did my research through Cracked magazine.
That's
that's a first for me. I generally
yeah,
rely on more reliable sources.
yeah.
But if Crack steered me wrong, please correct the record.
No, like I said, most of the information they got was correct, and there's just a few minor, you know, inaccuracies, but for the most part, it's brilliantly done.
Okay, so here's, and obviously Joe has been self-effacing here throughout this whole interview, but the self-effacing part I was going to refer to when I first brought up Cracked is how you continually refer to how you were an MMA fan. You're 40 at the time, right?
Yeah.
When this happens. So you're younger and a little bit in better shape. I'm thinking, or no, you know what? Maybe not, because you do a
No,
lot of
yeah.
working out now. Are you in better shape now than you were at
No,
the
no, but
time
I
of this
better
incident?
start. I was in better shape then, and I better get back into it right now.
Okay, got it,
Yeah,
got it, got it.
absolutely.
And you decided to do a one-leg takedown, and the Cracked video shows what it's supposed to look like, and then you describe what it did look like.
Yeah.
So, all right, so we can stop talking with smiles because some bad things are about to happen to Joe Lozito. But you decide this is a fight or flight situation. You're in a subway car. There's nowhere to run. So the flight is totally removed from the scenario. You have to do something. What happened?
Well, yeah, he kind of made my decision for me, and so he stabbed me in the face, and um, you know, I know it sounds cliche, a lot of people, but for me, my whole reason for being is my family. And I knew that I could fight back and I still might die. But I also may survive. Where if I just turtle, he's going to carve me up like a pumpkin, and I would never get off that train. And my whole drive behind that was to get off of the train. So I did go in for the single leg takedown, the worst single leg takedown in history. I've said it was a football tackle that may make someone like Chris Spielman or Darryl Talley proud, because I ended up tackling him around the waist, which did the job. I was able to take him down, but what it also did was give him free reign to my head, and that's when he ended up stabbing me 3 times, once on the side of the head and twice on the back of my head. And one of the wounds, I didn't know it at the time until I saw the pictures after, but one of them actually cut me down to my skull. But I was still able to take him down. And then fortunately, I ended up on top of him. And also, fortunately, while he was stabbing me in the back of the head, he didn't end up puncturing my spinal cord or something like that, or else we wouldn't be talking today.
Did you know,
And
or how aware were you of your self-defense and survival skills, or did you surprise yourself in that moment?
I didn't have any self-defense or survival skills. That was just it was survival, really. It was sort of like just I have to do something or he's going to kill me. You know, I don't think you can ever prepare for something like that. I mean, I guess you can, you know, self-defense wise, you can prepare for that, but once it's in your face, you have to make some decisions. And he kind of made my decision for me, and that was my choice, just to do it. And you know, if there was video of it, it was probably really sloppy to look at. So skills may be in quotes there, but I was just fortunate that I did something.
before the knife is out of his hand, he was also able to slash you on the thumb and on the arm. How bad were those injuries?
The one on my thumb, actually, in terms of permanent damage. So he got me here, basically the webbing, where the thumb meets the hand, and that was sliced down to the tendon. And I still have full use of it, but if I grab a gallon of milk, say a weird way or something, I kind of get tingles, and it's sort of a reminder, hey, maybe use the other 4 fingers, not just your thumb. And the one on my tricep was I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 stitches, but no permanent damage other than the scar, which I think by now I've covered up with a tattoo.
I know that thumb area, that's probably the worst place to get a paper cut.
Yeah,
Much worse.
It bleeds a lot, and well, I mean, that day was there were 7 wounds to compete for which was going to bleed the most, but it was just in an awkward spot. It's kind of like for an athlete, if you have an abdominal injury or a back injury, you can't sneeze, you can't do anything, and what you find out, even though I'm right hand dominant, you use your left hand for a lot of things, and I found that out during the recovery process.
There's a belief with a lot of people, but it's a masculine thing. I think it's a point of contention, something that you'll hear talked about at the bar. You get buddies together, and what would you do in that situation? Oh, I'd beat that guy's ass. Now you did put the guy down, and you were able to prevent a lot of further injury and probably death by what you did. But you've had now 11 years to digest this, and I'm sure that your opinion has changed as life changes and your perspective. But when you think back on who that was, meaning you in that moment, and under different circumstances, do things play out differently as you try to imagine what may have happened or what could have happened?
Well, I guess the answer to that would be I don't really have an answer. And the reason why is because, like you said, I had people after the incident that would come up to me, whether, it was on the streets or at a game or a combat sports event. And they would say, you know what, if I were you, if I was in your position, I would have done the same thing. And my answer was always, well, I guess you're a better man than I am, because if you had asked me the day before what I would have done, I wouldn't have had an answer for you. My answer really would have been, I hope I would fight back. I hope I would survive. But I honestly, if you had asked me that the day before, I wouldn't have had any idea. And even to this day, have things changed? Probably not, because in a similar scenario, maybe I would, if I had time to formulate a game plan, maybe it would be a little bit different. But if I'm in the same scenario, which is basically Thunderdome, and there's no way out, and there's no talking reason to a person, then, sometimes you have to take action. But I can't necessarily tell you what that action would be, because there's a difference between being in the situation and saying, oh, all right, so now you're in the situation, what are you going to do? Because even in a training environment, you're training for what the perpetrator might do, but nobody really knows until you're face to face.
How much, when you hear people say, well, I would have done that, or just the idea of, man, that guy better be lucky he didn't come after me, I'd have beat his ass. How much do you find yourself thinking bullshit?
Well, the funny thing is, and I say this all the time, I've been around a lot of combat sports athletes, and they're always the ones who are the most humble about what they're capable of. And you're talking about guys and ladies who, they walk into any room and they're the alpha male, and there's nobody in that room that's going to push them around. But yet you'd never know it. They're always the ones that are trying to de-escalate things and everything. So I think a lot of times when someone says, oh, they're lucky it wasn't me, or I would have done the same thing, I almost think those are people that are trying to convince themselves about how tough they are, or maybe they honestly believe that. But it's generally the guys who actually could handle themselves in that situation that aren't the ones that are bragging about what they could do or what they would do.
Do you think maybe? Oh, I'm
go ahead,
wondering, and maybe you've talked to different people about this. Do you think people should have some awareness of the potential that a violent attack like this could happen, and either train self-defense or have, as you call it, a game plan, some sort of idea in their own mind of how they would handle this type of, horrific challenge that could come to anybody on any subway car or any kind of situation in life, something like this could theoretically happen?
I think the biggest problem with that is I think a lot of people just feel like it can never happen to them. And I tell you what is becoming more and more frightening for me, as I work, I still go to work in the city, and it's just every day more and more people are just so into their devices, and people with their heads down, and people on subway, you see it all the time. People get thrown on the subway tracks or get attacked on platforms because they're not paying attention. So the thing is, I guess it really depends on the individual. I know now, that I do things a little bit differently. When I get on public transportation, I always try to be at one end of the car so I can see what's going on at the other end of the car. I use windows now and reflections like I've never used them before. But this is all stuff I never did before the attack. So do I think it's a good idea? Obviously, yes. But, for some people, maybe they just don't have the time, and maybe they think it's a big investment, where the reality is you could just go on YouTube and there's thousands of self-defense videos that could even teach you the basics. But like I said, I think the biggest thing is people, and maybe I was guilty of that, my whole life up until that day. You just don't think it's going to happen to you.
Now, just because Maxim Gelman has been apprehended after you're able to wrest the knife away from him, and you've been on the ground there, the police come, and we're going to learn here in a little bit how they took credit for apprehending Maxim Gelman. Just because the attack is over doesn't mean you're out of the woods. So you are bleeding profusely on the subway car. Who is Alfred Douglas, AKA Napkin Man?
Well, embarrassingly, and I guess it's a good thing because the media will come up with nicknames for people, and I guess there are worse nicknames out there than to be called the Subway Hero, although it's a little bit embarrassing for me. But if you ask me who Alfred Douglas is, I'm going to tell you he was the real hero that day. I was sitting there bleeding profusely out of I was wounded 7 times. One of them was a little smaller, maybe the one on my knuckle and the one on my thumb and my tricep weren't going to kill me. But the ones in my head were very deep, and it was basically like I tell people, next time you take a shower, put your neck to the shower head and let it pour down both sides of you. And that's really how the blood was pouring out of me. And the reason why I was sitting there was because when the fight was going on, someone had pulled the emergency brake. So we were stuck in the tunnel between Penn Station, which is the station under Madison Square Garden, and 42nd Street. So I had, once the police saved me, and I went and I sat down on the subway seat, I was just sitting there and I was just bleeding profusely. And I basically just talking to myself, like I remember one of the things I said to myself is try to stay calm, because I'm not a doctor. I don't know if I get amped up or I get excited, is the blood going to come out faster? I have no idea. So I'm trying to talk myself down, trying to talk my adrenaline down, because
that's
I
a
feel
pretty
like
clear thought in the moment, don't you think?
I don't know. Like, I just figured that. I mean, I don't know, but I remember thinking that, and I was literally trying to calm myself down, because I'm thinking if I get excited. And now I don't realize that the blood is literally spurting out of my head, like when your heart beats. But in my mind, I'm like, well, maybe just try to calm down. But then what happens is I'm sitting there for a few minutes, and now I start to get nervous because we're still not moving, and I don't want to die there, and I want to see my family. And we're just sitting there, and Alfred Douglas, he came up. Actually, he started yelling at the other passengers like, hey, no one's going to help this guy. Are you really ready to watch a man die in front of your eyes? And Alfred came over with his bare hands, and he basically applied pressure to my deepest wound. And then he was asking people if they had napkins or paper towel, whatever, and the woman gave him some napkins that she had, which of course were drenched within 2 seconds. But Alfred was the guy who I credit with saving my life, and he's the person that I say is the real hero that day. And the unfortunate part about this is I'm the only person that has ever mentioned Alfred in the media. The police never did, the city never did. Alfred was just, and they interviewed Alfred. They interviewed every single person that was on the train that day that they were able to corral. And they had Alfred there for a few hours interviewing him, and they never once gave him any credit. But who's Alfred Douglas? The answer is he's the real hero that day.
Have you stayed in touch with Alfred?
We spoke once or twice afterwards. We haven't stayed in touch, and I did a podcast maybe last year that was basically focusing on the duties of the police. And him and I didn't speak, but they actually tracked him down, and they got his opinions on things. And he was, like most people, shocked to find out that the Supreme Court, and I'm sure we'll get into that, so no spoiler alerts here. But we spoke maybe once or twice afterwards, and then I think one of the news stations was gonna try to get us together, maybe at a restaurant or something like that, and it never panned out.
Well, let's talk about the lawsuit. 2012, you filed a lawsuit against New York City over negligence. I mean, I don't know what the exact charge was, but it was a civil suit against New York City. It was eventually dismissed. And what the judge did was cite a Supreme Court case from 2005, Castle Rock v. Gonzalez, in which the Supreme Court ruled that police do not have a duty to protect someone. I guess we're jumping ahead because we left a little bit of the detail out. What was it that the police did in the situation or did not do that had you so upset?
Well, like you alluded to, the police. So during this killing spree that Maxim Gelman was on, eventually he was spotted in New York subways, I believe around 96th Street. And someone had seen him, went up to street level, called the police and said, I just saw Maxim Gelman, he's in the subways. So if you picture any of the old cop shows or cop movies, well, now you got the APB out. They sent thousands of police officers into the subways. Now, for people that aren't familiar with the New York City subway system, there's a ton of subway lines, there's a ton of subway cars. At this point, it actually, to me, would almost be like trying to find a needle in a haystack, because he's going to be jumping on and off trains, he's going to be running in tunnels. The fact that he ended up on a subway car that had 2 police officers in it is, to me, it's not even a minor miracle. Actually, the odds of that happening are pretty insane. And when you factor in the odds of him actually knocking on the door where the police were in the motorman's compartment watching the tracks because they needed to get all the police that were off the tracks. Well, at that point, they were looking for Gelman on the tracks. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead now. They're looking for him on the tracks. So now, because we're going very slowly, and now while they're watching the tracks, they get a knock at the door, and it's the guy they're looking for. It's your career-defining arrest falling right into your hands. And he doesn't know that he's speaking to the police. He thinks he's speaking to the engineer. So instead of them doing what I do believe a good number of police would do, come out and handle the situation, they just had a conversation with this man and basically let him attack me. And they let us have our fight. And they basically let him do what he had to do to me in order to make it easier for them to finally arrest him. And one thing I would like to bring up, when the dust settled and when we got to 42nd Street, they had cleared the station. So that we get to 42nd Street, the paramedics are there waiting for me. As soon as they open the doors, the paramedics come on, they attend to me, they take Gelman off the subway, they bring him upstairs. As they're taking me off the subway seat and putting me onto the stretcher, I pass out, but I'm still conscious. It's kind of like when you're falling asleep watching TV and you can still hear the TV even though your eyes are closed. And I hear what's going on around me. And I heard one of the police officers behind me. It was the female police officer. That's one of the inaccuracies of the cracked animation. It was a male cop and a female cop, not 2 male cops. I hear her behind me talking to one of the other police officers, and I heard her call me likely. And I didn't know what that meant. And I found out later that day in the hospital from my sister, who was also a member of the NYPD. And I said, hey, what does it mean when you guys call someone likely? And my sister turned white and she goes, what do you mean, Joseph? They called you likely? I said, yeah, I heard her say something likely. She goes, that means likely to die. So they were ready for me to go. And in the years that have happened since then, I'm sure I'm a little bit of a thorn in their side. But those two officers were ready to sacrifice my life to make their arrest when nobody had to get hurt. They could have just done their job right from the beginning.
What kind of feedback did you get from your sister on the police officers and what they did and did not do that day?
Well, my sister, I'm sort of mellow, I'm sort of laid back. I'm sort of mellow. My sister is actually, if I can say, she's kind of a badass, and my sister will always march to the beat of her own drummer. And before I even announced the lawsuit, I obviously I'm discussing it with my family, and I said, listen, I don't want you to get any blowback from this. And needless to say, she absolutely didn't care at all. She said, this is ridiculous. And to be honest with you, most of the police officers that I've encountered, I have some good friends who recently retired from the force, and most of the officers in her precinct are actually behind me because it makes them all look bad. And I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the officers in her precinct actually took up a collection for me, because obviously I was out of work for a little bit. In Lincoln Center was great. They actually paid me for the time I was out, but I think they took up a little bit of a collection. So you're always going to get, in any occupation, you're always going to get the people that toe the company line and are always going to be pro whatever the occupation is. But I did get a lot of support from police officers. I had officers come up to me in Penn Station that said, I could never say this publicly, but I hope you win. It's an embarrassment. They're an embarrassment. I don't know if you guys have TD Bank up there in Buffalo, but we have them here. And there's always, so they hire police officers, I guess, on their days off, and there'll be security in uniforms there. And I would go into the bank, and I had multiple officers say, hey, you're the guy from the subway. How'd everything go? And, I received a lot of support from the police, but my sister, she couldn't care. She was probably waiting for someone to say something to her, to be honest. So, but she's my sister, and I love her, and we support each other with everything. So that was absolutely a no-brainer. She was ready.
One of the fascinating parts, there's so many fascinating parts to the story, but this sounds like it comes out of an espionage film, is the person tailing you on your way to work one day, who happens to be a member of the grand jury, who heard the police testify under oath. And can you relay that scene for us?
Yeah. So when I did a lot of interviews following everything that happened. I mean, I was in the hospital on Saturday. They released me Sunday afternoon. On Monday, I was on Good Morning America on the big billboard in New York City doing interviews with all the networks. And, I always tried to downplay my role in this. And I always try to say, well, I'm not a hero. And, people that risk their lives every day, they're heroes, like, not necessarily the two cops on my train, but police officers, firefighters, EMTs that save lives. And that was what I said. And I honestly feel that way. Like I said, I had a sister, thank God she's retired. And every day she would go to work not knowing if she was coming home to my niece that night. So that was basically what I would always try to deflect any praise. And what happened was I was out of work for a few weeks. And in that time I was out of work, I testified before the grand jury. And that day I testified with the same day as the two officers. And mine went first. And they had showed some photographs of the end result of my wounds to the grand jury, which it was I only saw one of them. That's the one I was mentioning earlier where you could see my skull. And the grand jury I'm surprised some of them didn't get sick. Some of them wouldn't even look at them because you could see if you looked over, there was a lot of blood and this and that. But when I went back to work, apparently there was a member of the grand jury that day that had been, because it was in the papers, they work for Lincoln Center, and he would pop up every now and then looking for me. And I get out of work one day and I have time to wait for my train. So in the front of Lincoln Center, there's a fountain. So I'm just talking to one of my buddies on the phone. And I go, you're not going to believe this. I said, there's someone following me. And he goes, get out of here. And I'm like, I'm telling you. So I go, I'll call you back. So I hang up the phone. I slow my pace. He keeps his pace. And I turn around quickly and I'm like, can I help you? And he goes, oh, I'm not looking for trouble. I just want to talk to you. And then he's like, "You're Joe, right? The guy from the subway," which is funny because I still have all my staples in my head and all the other stuff. So yeah, it was obvious. And he goes, "Oh, I was on the grand jury." So again, this is a big story in the paper. So I said, "Prove it." And the reason why I mentioned the photos is because those were never made public, but he described what they were. So I knew he was legitimate. And he told me that, after I testified, that he went on YouTube and watched a lot of my videos. And he goes, "Listen, I just got to tell you, you're giving way too much credit to the police. They hung you out to dry." And I said, "Well, I didn't mean them specifically. I was just talking in general." He goes, "No, you don't really understand what happened." So I said, "Well, okay, what happened?" Because in my head, I knew there was a delay in their action, but I didn't know the details. And basically, after I was done testifying, I left. I went home. Terrence Howell, the male cop that day, he testified. And basically what he testified to was that when we had first started fighting, he had started to open the door to come out, but he thought that Maxim Gelman had a gun, so he closed the door and stayed inside. So basically what he testified to was leaving a train full of unarmed civilians to deal with a spree killer that he was there to stop. And with that, I felt like I was attacked all over again. And you had mentioned my commute earlier when we were talking. I don't think we're recording yet, but yes, now I have to. At the time, I'm living in Philadelphia. Now I have this on my mind. I have a 2.5 hour commute home, and I have to tell my wife this. And like I said, that was just like getting attacked all over again.
How did the court proceedings or the litigation process leave you? And I know that obviously the defeat is self-explanatory, but I'm sure it was more visceral than that.
You use the word defeat, and I wish it was a defeat. I don't even consider that I got up to the plate. My whole thing with the system that we have here in this country is I feel like I deserve a chance. I deserved my chance to stand in a courtroom in front of a jury of my peers, to have my peace and bring this and let the people decide what happened that day. And the judge, because I feel there is a large amount of corruption in this country in the justice system, obviously the judge, in my opinion, maybe it's not obvious, but I always feel like there's very few opportunities in life to really make a difference. And I had mentioned earlier with this, the potential for a career defining arrest that was dropped into these two officers' hands, and they let it go. And now the judge has an opportunity here. Yes, there were precedents that were set. Nothing like my case, though. And the judge here had an opportunity to be that person that says, well, and she basically said how credible my account was in her dismissal papers. And this judge had the opportunity to be the judge that said, this is wrong. We have to allow this to go to court. And guys, if I had gone to court and I had said my piece, and when it was all said and done, the jury says they're not guilty, I wouldn't be happy. I'm not going to lie, I wouldn't be happy, but I'd feel like the process was done, and maybe I didn't do a good enough job of presenting it, but I didn't even get the opportunity. And to this day, that's something that I will never get over. That's all I ever wanted, was a chance. I didn't get it. And if people see my Twitter account every day, I'm posting about stuff like that every day, because I don't want to say it's not fair, because I sound like a child, but what are we doing here? I just give me my chance. And if I lose, I lose. There's no shame in losing, but give me the opportunity. But it was obvious that she was protecting the city and the police.
I was going to say, you do believe it is kind of that case of a local judge protecting the local police officers, or is there some legal basis to the decision that was made?
Well, it's a Supreme Court. It wasn't even like the local courts. It was a Supreme Court judge. And again, like Tim had cited one of the cases that they used, and in their papers, the city's papers to dismiss my case, they cited cases that had absolutely nothing to do with my case. There were cases involving broken fences. There were cases involving luxury sports cars. Nothing. There was maybe one case out of maybe the 100 that they put in there that was even remotely in the same universe as mine. And like I said, in my opinion, you get very few, there are certain occupations where you can make a difference. And I think being a judge is one of those where you can kind of say, I can kind of dismiss this and use these precedents as an example, or I can do something different here because this case is like nothing I've ever seen before. The Castle Rock and Gonzalez case is a tragic case, and and it's heartbreaking. It has nothing to do. There's no similarities to my case, but the corporate counsel for the city, it just seemed like they threw every sort of case on their dismissal papers and see what stuck. And I feel like that my papers against dismissal, and the judge even said it in her dismissal, that my account seems highly credible. And to me, so was that my consolation prize? Because, so what are you saying, that you believe my account, but you're still going to screw me? It's not a consolation prize I want. I'd rather get the opportunity to battle, and then if I lose, so be it. But let me go out that way.
I don't know if thrown out cases are used as precedent, but have you ever heard about your case being used as precedent to stop people from suing the city?
I don't know about that. What I do know is every time something comes up, like the unfortunate events in Uvalde, where the police sort of, well, I don't know what they were thinking, but in articles, it's always cited, like in because I think the reaction for most people is, well, what were the police doing? And like my lawyer and I said, there's no amount of money that's going to change what happened, but in this day and age, well, I'm a big accountability guy. And if the only accountability is to bring the police to court and make them pay a punishment or just whatever, then so be it. And I'm sure if you ask any of the parents of the children in Uvalde, they're not looking for money. It's never going to bring their children back. But there has to be some accountability. And like in New York City, I tweet about it every day, there's no accountability here for criminals. So usually when something like that happens, my case is often cited by writers, but I don't know if it's ever been cited in a case that's been thrown out. I mean, they could. I mean, I guess so, right? Because it's on the books as a case officially, even though it never went to court. So I mean, maybe they could, but I'm not aware of it.
How does it affect you when you see news stories or violent incidents that happen around the country, and in some cases there is maybe police negligence or misconduct involved?
It may, I was, this is one of the things Tim and I were talking about last night. It makes me angry. And the reason why it makes me angry is obviously there's the surface anger where you go, what were you thinking? We'll go back to Uvalde where there's children and their lives at stake. What were you doing? But part of the anger comes from the fact that I think if my case was allowed to go to court, and I think if I did win, then I think that opens up an avenue for a lot of these people that want to seek some sort of retribution or accountability for those people who failed them. So I'm angry on the surface just with the news story, but then there's a deeper anger thinking that I didn't get the opportunity to maybe help other people when they're going through something tragic like that.
How much does that affect you, Joe, in terms of, I mean, you did what you could. I mean, you tried 3 times, in fact, right, to sue New York City. But do you carry weight on this? You shouldn't. I'm not saying that you should, but do you? You're a human being. Do you?
The thing that like I said, the thing that bothers me the most is that I didn't get my opportunity. It bothers me when like I just said, where I feel like maybe I could have helped other people, but I try to think things through. I try to play everything through, and the reason why I didn't have the opportunity to maybe help people when they're going through tragic events was not of my doing. I'm always one to say, if I can put my head on my pillow at night and know that I did the best I could that day, whether it was for my family or for friends or whatever, then if things didn't happen and it was out of my control, then I really can't have that weigh on my conscience. So, but if I half-assed it that day or half-assed an opportunity, well, yeah, that would bother me. But I know when it comes to my case, the sports cliche, I gave it 100%, and I did everything I could do. I was just David going up against a Goliath, and I didn't have the resources to appeal. So it was really just the one time that it was dismissed. And when I searched out for other legal counsel, it was an uphill battle, because then they had to prove that the first case shouldn't have been dismissed, and I'm just a middle class guy living paycheck to paycheck, so I didn't have the resources to appeal or anything like that. So they kind of had me by the balls.
How have you used this experience? How have you channeled it over the last 11 years?
Probably. See, that's a tough question, in a sense where it's easy to say, well, I don't take anything for granted anymore. Probably the biggest thing, and I know my family probably gets sick of me saying this, but I don't let little things bother me, because something I say all the time is, I've been through worse. So where something might be a stressful situation for some people, for most people, I kind of go, well, I've been through worse. And maybe that kind of just gives me the opportunity to step back and see if there's a way to handle the situation without, losing my mind or overreacting. But other than that, I'm still the same person. I'm still the same person that I always was. But, like I said, I approach things differently when I use public transportation. I have less faith in the government and justice system, but for the most part, I'm pretty much the same person.
How has your experience, or has it affected how you view mixed martial arts and sport fighting, and even the violence in hockey and football, and any type of violence for the sake of play and recreation?
It hasn't, to be honest, because with football and combat sports and hockey, those are grown men and women. Those are adults. Well, nowadays anyway, with obviously with concussions and the research behind that, people know what they're getting into. I find it. I don't watch combat sports as much as I used to, but it's only because I think it's sort of diluted right now. I kind of liked it better the old way, where it was maybe one event a month or one event every 6 weeks. But it has nothing to do with that. I believe that grown people make their own decisions. It's sort of like me. I can't worry about someone who chooses to smoke or drink to excess. Even if it's a friend of mine, I could try to maybe talk them out of it, but I don't really care for people to sort of push their beliefs on me, and I like to do the same thing. So if you want, if combat sports or football or something high impact where there's a danger down the road is an opportunity that someone wants to pursue, well, then go for it. Like I said, there's dangers to everything, and I don't want that to sound like a cop out, but if you choose to smoke every day or drink, like I said, you can do that to excess, and you can shorten your life there. So I feel the same way about sports and things about sports that I did before the incident.
How do you feel about your Buffalo Bills? Let's change the subject, I guess, because that is how we know each other. And you are wearing your Bills cap, although Jonah did point out they are not traditional colors. It looks like it could be a Detroit Lions cap.
Yes.
Your Bills, what has you excited and what has you worried?
You know what? I can honestly say, when you mention the Buffalo Bills, I just smile. It just, when I was younger, I was all into like stats and numbers and things like that. And I find myself, as I get older, I just want to watch the games. There's so much information out there. Where back when Tim, I think we're probably about the same age. Jonah, you look a lot younger than us, but back in the day, we had we had to search for all that information, where now it's at our fingertips. And I kind of liked it better the old way. Now I get my information from a few people in the Buffalo media, present company included, on my Bills, and but I kind of filter it out. But my thing is, you gotta go for it. Like, the whole point of playing is to win. And this team, the way it's currently constituted, to me, is built to win and win now. And I think some people find me sickeningly optimistic, but I usually am that way about the Bills. Usually, well, when there were 16 game seasons, I used to predict 12-4 every year. I'd go 8-0 at home and split on the road. Nothing really concerns me right now because, well, I mean, the one thing I'm always concerned about, obviously, if Josh Allen gets hurt, then that's like every team. Your starting quarterback gets hurt, then you got to go to a plan B, and it's usually not nearly as good as plan A. But I think if everyone stays healthy, especially Josh Allen, I will not settle for anything less than a Super Bowl victory this year.
How did you come to be a Bills fan? And maybe you can tell us why you're wearing that Lions hat.
Yes. So I became a Bills fan. So I grew up in Queens, which is a borough outside of Manhattan. And we lived downstairs from my grandparents and my uncle. Now, my uncle was only a little bit older than me, so it was kind of like having a big brother. And he was a Jets fan, and he loved Joe Namath. So I used to watch football with him, and we were watching the Bills and Jets once, and they had Joe Ferguson. And when you're a kid, it could just be any reason why you root for a team. So my uncle was there. He liked Joe Namath, Jet fan. I'm Joe. My uncle's Joe. Bills have a Joe Ferguson. It's as simple as that. I probably like the helmets too, and I just latched onto them, and the rest is history. And to this day, Joe Ferguson's still my favorite all-time Bill.
It's not the X's and O's, Jonah. It's the Jimmies and Joes.
That's it. In this case, definitely.
the Jimmies and OJs.
Yeah. Oh, and about the hat. So I try not to have too many real life rules, but I have a lot of stupid things. Like, I call them violations. Like, if you have a jersey with your own name on the back, that's a violation. Or if you have a jersey style and you have a name and number on the back and the player never wore that, like down here, we have a lot of stupid people that wear the Islanders fisherman jersey, but they'll put the Hall of Famers on the back. That drives me crazy. I don't own any piece of Buffalo memorabilia that isn't red, white, and blue. I love this hat, and I allow myself to wear it because it's the original colors. So that's the only piece of memorabilia I have that isn't red, white, and blue.
On a technicality.
Always. You got to find the technicalities. Absolutely. Or else I wouldn't have bought it. Believe it or not, I absolutely, as much as I like it, I wouldn't have purchased it.
Ralph Wilson, his original choice of colors were the same as his Detroit Lions, that he grew up rooting for and owned a little piece of at one point. Joe, tell us, I mean, people who are watching on YouTube can see all the jerseys back there. It looks like it's all hockey, but maybe you have some other stuff. Is it all Islanders? What we got?
So,
and what are you into? What are you, I mean, I guess not just what you have on display, but what are you into?
Well, I grew up baseball, football, hockey. Don't really watch baseball too much anymore. I think the analytics have killed it for me, and the player, the ESPN attitude, look at me attitude. That's not for me. My friends, my wife, they call me the cranky old man. That's not for me. I love watching the classic games on TV. I don't really watch too much baseball anymore, but still, football, hockey. I like combat sports. I actually watch the CFL, Saskatchewan Roughriders. I follow them. So I like that. And down here, I've been collecting for so many years, but I never really had the opportunity to display it. And in January, we moved to this new place here. And one of the selling points was it has a pretty big basement. So I'm able to display all my memorabilia. And most of it is hockey. It's a lot of game jerseys from a lot of the tougher players who have ever played the game with Islander connections. And then further down, it's a laptop, so I can't take you down there. But further down there, I have a bunch of game use sticks, and I have some Bills items as well, some jerseys, some helmets. So if I was on my phone, I could give you a little bit of a tour. But yeah, so this is just something that I've always wanted to do. And the ironic thing is, and I guess this probably happens with a lot of people, once I actually set everything up, I didn't think there was any chance in hell that I'd run out of room, but of course I have run out of room. So I might have to liquidate a little bit, but yeah, this is where I come down. We watch all the games down here. My wife is a sports nut too, so we watch all the games down here, and just finally after all these years can have a place of my own. So,
what about your time working for Fleer? how did that, what was that like? And how did that maybe ignite some of your sports memorabilia collecting?
Jonah, if you tell any kid that collected baseball cards at any point in their life that, hey, you're going to get a job where you get to pick the pictures to be on sports cards, it's pretty amazing. It was an absolute dream job. I got the job because I used to work for Bruce Bennett Studios, which he's a world-renowned hockey photographer. He now works for Getty Images. He was the team photographer for the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Flyers. And I worked for him doing research, and a photo editor position became available at Fleer. I interviewed for it and I got it. And that was a blast. I did that for maybe 5 years before they filed for bankruptcy. But that was, like I said, it was a dream job. You get to pick pictures, to be on sports cards. And I remember, picking a picture of Mark McGuire, one of his cards with his son. And I think there was another one of Kyle Turley with his child. And it was actually pretty cool just to be able to do something like that, because you have to obviously get their permission also. And when you see it come to life, you see it come to fruition, it's actually pretty cool.
What's that process like? Can you take us through it? Unless it's too painstaking, but when you're a photo editor for baseball cards, and what did Fleer do? Fleer did football and baseball, right? They didn't do hockey?
We did baseball, football. As far as sports go, baseball, football, basketball. I think, and then we didn't have an NHL license while I was there, but we were allowed to do a few sets of retired players, because then you were just dealing with the individual players. So
right, okay,
during my time there, we did 3 sets of retired players.
And what's the process like then when it comes time to, like, what is given to you? What is, are you given what's your,
we have,
I'm trying to think of the word. What's the word whatever.
Yeah,
well, what's your assignment? Did
yeah,
they give you a manila folder or whatever the hell? I don't know.
So when I first started there,
your dossier.
Yeah, well, that's a fancy word. When I first started there, all the photos were on 35 millimeter slides. So we'd have file cabinets full of slides. We had photographers that would we had, I think, 8 photographers that we had on staff that would shoot the football and the baseball, and then the NBA we would get from NBA photos. But the football, baseball, that was done in-house. And basically the person that was in charge of the set would just give us a checklist of players that were going to be in the set. And then we would just go to our photo library and pick out the photos. And then they were handed off to another one of my colleagues. They took it from there, and it eventually went to printing. Towards the end of my tenures, when everything started to go digital, it was a lot easier then, because then we just had computer programs where all the libraries were stored online. So it made the process a little bit more streamlined. But there was more to it. And it was funny because my boss at the time would always kind of cringe when people would go, "Oh, you just pick the pictures for the cards." And obviously we did other things. It wasn't that simple, but that was the crux of the job, and it was awesome. And that was basically it. So like I said, for the NBA, we'd have to go up to Secaucus and go to NBA photos. And then when we did the hockey sets, that's when I was able to go back to Bruce Bennett Studios, this time as a client, and pick the photos for those sets. So, but it's as cool as you think it was, to be honest with you. If you're thinking that sounds pretty cool, it was amazing.
Can you still get a job like that? Or I guess maybe the sports card industry has changed, but is reviving in some ways. You might know more about this than I do.
I would think there's probably jobs out there like that, but I think there's less companies. I think right now it's pretty much just Topps and Upper Deck. If you see the Fleer name out there, I think that's an Upper Deck product. When Fleer filed for bankruptcy, I think Upper Deck picked some of the bones clean and bought the rights to certain things. So I believe if you see a new Fleer product, that's actually an Upper Deck product. I just think there's not that much out there. I'm sure there are people that have positions like that, but that my time in that industry is gone.
Is there a famous card that you did? I mean, some cards got to be iconic, rookie cards or what have you. Or do you have any to mention?
No, well, it's funny, because I think when people think of Fleer, they right away think of the Billy Ripken card. And of course, when I was there for a little bit, I said, "Hey, where's that Billy Ripken slide?" And it was in like this safe, this giant safe that nobody had the key to even get into the door that locked where the safe was behind. So no, I don't have any famous ones, but I will say my favorite set that I did was we did one of the hockey sets we did, and it was sort of focused on the more physical players, and that was a fun set to do because I got a lot of the players in there, that are players that I grew up admiring. So that was probably my favorite set.
Well, Joe, this has been fun. I don't know if you have any final thoughts on your Bills that you'd like to mention. You already picked them to win the Super Bowl, so I don't really know what more there is to say. But it should be a entertaining season. If it's not an entertaining season, then something really went wrong.
Yes. And well, I would like to say something, Tim, because I know one of the things we discussed was about how Josh Allen is sort of required conversation now. And I know that I just want to say what it is about Josh Allen, that why he's a fan, why this household is a big fan of his. I'm 51. Like I said, I get jaded now a little bit with the salaries and the business end of sports. And one of the reasons why my wife and I, we love Josh Allen is because obviously he has a lot of money. He's set for life, probably set for a couple of lifetimes. But when he's on the field, he kind of just looks like a kid. Like, he looks like he's having fun out there, and he has that youthful exuberance, and it actually looks like he cares. And when they're doing well, he's so happy. And when they're not doing well, it looks like it's really bothering him. And I think with a lot of the athletes out there, I don't seem to get that anymore. And Josh, he just seems to be like a big 14-year-old out there doing things and just having fun. And the one analogy that I've always given, another Buffalo sports person that I equate his exuberance to, Brad May. When Brad May was with Buffalo, I got to know him pretty well. I still consider him a friend. And even though it's a business, and Brad May played a very physical role, and I think maybe in the beginning was criticized a little unfairly because first round pick, he had a great career. Brad May always had a smile on his face. He always appreciated the job that he had playing professional sports. And obviously Brad didn't make the money that Josh makes, I'm sure, even in a season. But to this day, if you look at Brad May's social media, he's just this happy guy, never any negativity. He's just always positive. And at a certain point in Josh's career, I kind of made that connection with him and Brad, that they're just like these big kids out there. And for someone like me, that really resonates with me, and I really appreciate it because it seems like they care. And that's my little spiel on Josh Allen. And Tim, by the way, you're right. Brian Cox is still the number one enemy in my eyes. Though when you talked about that a couple of episodes ago, right. He'll always be my number one.
Your sports villain.
Absolutely.
Joe, what do you think about the state of the Buffalo Sabres, being, I believe, an Islanders fan, but you follow the NHL probably well enough to have a take?
I think, in my opinion, I think for Sabres fans, this is probably the first time in a long time. I think you should have a real sense of optimism. Obviously it's a long road ahead, but it seems like they really trust in Granato. He seems like the right person for the job. I think it's just, you got to capitalize on these draft picks. I think for a long time, Buffalo Sabres hockey was sort of like how the Islanders were down here. It was sort of like a dead end. And it was, even as optimistic as I always try to be, I couldn't be with the Islanders. And I think a lot of Sabres fans probably feel the same way, where now I think they're a team maybe 2-3 years down the road to look out for. I think that they're progressing in the right direction. I think they're making some strides that other teams aren't. So, I wish them all the best. I've always kind of liked following the Sabres, like I said, mentioned Brad May, and when they had, guys like May and Barnaby and Bobby Bugner and Roman Ender, those are my kind of players. So I always, when Ted Nolan was the coach, that's really around the time where I really started appreciating the Sabres. And how could you not root for them, even from the outside? Like, Buffalo, blue collar town, be great for the Sabres to be successful and give the fans something to cheer for.
Yeah, as a Bills fan, I'm sure that translates because the fan base.
Yeah,
and you can commiserate with them, and there's so much overlap with Bills and Sabres fans, and hell, Long Island's not that much different either. I mean, it's that's although you have experienced some championships.
Yeah, and things are. I know there's some fans that are a little down after going to the 2 Eastern Conference Finals and then having a down year this year, but there's so much that went into that down year this year, and for me, I'm expecting a long playoff run with the Islanders too next year. They still have the same core here, and you start with the goaltending and go out. Goaltending solid, the defense is solid, and my wife thinks I'm crazy when I say things like that sometimes, but I'm expecting a long playoff run here too. So we're Islanders are in a little different spot. They're a little ahead of Buffalo at the moment, but there's no reason why Buffalo can't be in a spot like this in a year or two.
What did you think of CM Punk showing up on Long Island in the Tavares jersey? Did you get a look at that?
It's funny. You're speaking to one of the few Islander fans who doesn't hate John Tavares. I like John Tavares as a person. When everything happened to me back then, there were a lot of organizations that really kind of wrapped their arms around me. The Islanders were one of them. Dean Chenault was an assistant coach, and I had known Dean for a long time before that. And the Islanders were really one of the organizations that kind of wrapped their arms around me. And John was there, and John was really good to me. So to me, it's more about the person than the athlete. And as much as I do like Garth Snow, I think Garth is just as culpable as John when he left, because if I'm Garth Snow and I have John in my office, if John doesn't sign that contract, I got to trade him. I can't take the chance of him leaving. What I thought about that, I thought that was hilarious. I thought it was the perfect heel move to do here, to wear a John Tavares jersey at the new UBS Arena. I thought that was hilarious.
What would be number two? If you have to go back to an old timer, do you have to go back to, or a Ranger?
Probably Rangers. You could probably put anyone, maybe Messier, maybe, but any Ranger jersey is going to do the trick. Anything Rangers, it will definitely do the trick. But that Tavares thing, yeah, he's kind of public enemy number one here. Even if, my wife and I are split on that. She's not a fan, but that was a good move. But yeah, a Ranger, anything Rangers would definitely be number two.
What would the comparable move be at a Buffalo show? Would it be a Jack Eichel jersey?
Probably, yeah, I would say so. Right now, there's a lot
Tom
of
Brady
hate towards him.
I mean, if we're doing hockey, but if you're doing hockey, then yeah, probably Eichel. But Tom Brady, right?
Yeah, probably Brady, unless you're me and you still hate the Dolphins more than the Patriots, because I'm so old. I remember when they were the scourge for Bills fans. So the Dolphins will always be my number one hated team, even to this day, as pathetic as they are now. I can't let sports stuff go, so I still hate them more than the Patriots.
Brian Cox might not pop in 2022.
Definitely not, but for an old fart like me, he does.
Especially when his son, is he still on the Bills, or he's been on the Bills at points in the recent years? And
yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's still there, but yeah, you're not. People nowadays, probably new age fans don't know who Brian Cox is, but he definitely put the Brady jersey on. That'll get them going. But then, for the geriatric crowd like myself, you could put on a old Dolphins jersey or mention Don Shula, and it'll get the blood boiling.
Milan Lukic, maybe.
Yeah, I like Milan, so I like him. Not my blood, everyone else's maybe. Or maybe Brett Hull, right? He's the one that scored the goal with the in the Stanley Cup, right? He's the one that scored the winner. Maybe Brett Hull.
I still think Eichel pops. Eichel and Brady are your choices.
Right now, no one's topping Eichel in terms of it being, if you had the event in the Buffalo Arena. But yeah, Brady too. But yeah, I think current events, Eichel's going to get the most venom.
Or maybe Vasily Girov ending Joe Macy's career.
I don't think so.
Now you're bringing me back to the old Empire Network, right? That's how I used to know about all those guys when I had the satellite dish. We used to watch Empire all the time. So,
well, Joe, I've really enjoyed this, and love to have you on again just to talk football. Maybe as we get into the season, we get some thoughts. You're good at this.
Oh, I appreciate that.
You're eloquent.
Eloquent. I've been called a lot of things. I don't know if eloquent's been one of them, but
add it to the list.
But I'll take it as a compliment. And anytime you send up the bat signal, I'll be there for sure.
Beautiful. Well, this is going to be the start of not a start of a beautiful F, but the continuation and we're going to amplify this F. We're gonna do more with this.
There's so much to be said for the start of a beautiful F. I tell you,
Well, I appreciate this. Let me give some more plugs. Follow Joe on Twitter at Joe_Lozito. One more time, at Joe_Lozito, Lozito. buy his book on Amazon, The New York Subway Hero, My Battle with Evil and a Spree Killer. Stop by and see him at Carnegie Hall. Buy some tickets to something. Say hello.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for whatever the hell reason, you got to go to it's a historic venue. Hey, if you got time to go see Yankee Stadium, Wrigley Field, go see Carnegie Hall.
Get some culture.
But dress a little nicer than we're dressed here on this podcast.
Just a little.
Joe, thanks so much for this. Have a great summer, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Jonah. Really happy to be here. Appreciate it.
Thanks to everybody out there for listening to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. CTBK is more than just a full-service accounting firm. They are one team with an innovative approach to accounting and rise to each new challenge with collaborative problem-solving skills. CTBK goes above and beyond by lending helping hands in the Buffalo and Niagara community through volunteer work and donations, and is partnered up with Victory Sports for 2020 and 2021 to keep kids in the community active. The professionals at CTBK are determined to help individuals and businesses succeed. Whether a large corporation, a small business, or somewhere in between, call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400, and see what CTBK's one-team approach can do for you.